Good morning, YouTube. Baubles on a lot here. 8th of May, ready for first dog on the moon.
Day extra. Welcome to First Dog on the Moon's Guide to Modern Living. Thanks to the ABC efficiency dividend, our introduction is 10% shorter. And we cross now live to a press conference with the Minister for Immigration and Border Protection, Peter Dutton. Just a moment, I'll unlock the door. Do come in.
Oh, look, thanks so much. Actually, we're just trying to find a phone. Our car's broken down and we're on our way to a press conference with...
Yes, with the Immigration Minister. We've been expecting you. All right. Take those sound effects back to the library. We've used the year's quota in the first 30 seconds. We don't want Ms. Guthrie to have to answer any more questions in estimates. That's enough. Now, where were we? Do come in.
Oh, is this really the Department of Immigration?
Welcome to Castle Relic. I'm Roman Quadri. I'm the head of Border Force. Also, I do a bit of cleaning up around the place, mow the occasional lawn and laundry. The master always has lots of laundry.
Is Minister Dutton here? We heard there was a press conference, but we got lost, and then the car.
The master will be with you shortly. Please, take a seat. Would you like a biscuit?
Oh, thanks.
I made them myself. The master will see you now. Follow me to the conservatory.
Excuse me, Minister.
Good evening.
Thanks for inviting us, Minister. We're wondering if you had any comment on what appears to be the complete failure of your department's duty of care to vulnerable people in danger.
Well, yes. It's been a very difficult time for all of us. Australians need to understand that there's terrible suffering going on, and when someone takes advantage of that suffering, it is the height of cruelty.
Do you mean your accusation, without evidence, of asylum seeker advocates encouraging people to self-harm?
No.
Do you mean locking people up in a tropical gulag for years so they go insane while you pretend to process their applications for asylum?
No. It's much worse than that. They took a funny photo of me and put it on the internet. I'm a meme now. All right, that's enough. The horror. I demanded they take the mean photo down, but that only made it worse. I've never experienced discomfort like it. So much mockery and inconvenience. Finally, someone tweeted it with the caption, "I'd like to add you to my network on LinkedIn." This is the worst example of man's inhumanity to man. Master, have you mentioned it to Gillian Triggs? She might be able to help. I find your lack of faith disturbing, Roman.
It's almost 10 o'clock here on Sunday Extra. That's it for us.
Yeah. Well, for those unfamiliar with developments in Manus Island and Nauru, two people up there have set fire to themselves. One of them's dead, one of them's in intensive care. And they set fire to themselves among a spate of suicide attempts after a United Nations Refugee Committee visit showed up and explained to them that, well, actually, yes, you are United Nations recognised refugees. You genuinely can't go back to where you came from. But because you showed up on Australia's coast without papers in a leaky boat, therefore you're not permitted to go to Australia, and you have to wait for somebody in some third country to decide that they'd like to have a homeless refugee and rescue you from the concentration camp on Manus Island. So you might have to expect to be here for about the next 10 years, fellas. Okay, so a 23-year-old set himself on fire and died, and then somebody else set himself on fire and died. And then the latest chapter in the saga was that the minister decided that all of these self-harm incidents were not genuine expressions of despair. They weren't genuine attempts at suicide. They weren't even motivated by the genuine feelings of the person who was cooking himself. It was all orchestrated, choreographed, manipulated, and instigated by the refugee advocates in Australia who had given false hope to the refugees that they would eventually, make their way to Australia because the Australian government will see sense and stop acting like a bunch of Nazis. So, yeah, it's not a new allegation from this particular raw prawn with a cooked head we call the Minister for Immigration. Last time he came up with the idea, he was blaming the riots on the refugee advocates. He's since had to formally apologise after 2 different inquiries and commissions into the event showed that there was absolutely zero evidence at all whatsoever that any of the advocates for freeing the refugees had advised any of the incarcerated refugees to harm themselves or riot or break any laws or do anything else. It's all a complete figment of a deranged, paranoid, schizoid imaginitis inhabiting the Liberal National Government in Canberra. Yeah, so just as all that was breaking, there emerged the news that there's now I don't know whether she's 17 or 18 or something, 19-year-old. There's a woman who was on Manus, Nauru, one of the two, forget which, but she was having a fit. She was unconscious. And the Australian government in loco parentis was taking such great care of this unconscious incarcerated refugee that she was raped while she was unconscious having a fit. So therefore, they decided that the best thing for her would be to give her an abortion. But of course, nobody on Manus Island or Nauru can ever come to Australia, and the government does everything they possibly can to resist any such event occurring, even, when they cook themselves. Okay, we'll bring them back to Brisbane and we'll let them die in the ICU there. Can't avoid that. But they've decided to send this woman from our concentration camp here on Nauru to Papua New Guinea to have an abortion, where it's illegal in Papua New Guinea to procure an abortion. So the Australian Minister for Immigration is attempting to procure an illegal abortion for a incarcerated refugee who he let get raped while she was unconscious. And that's all under the slogan of we stop the boats, we stop the boats, we stop the boats. But there have been 2 boats towed off Christmas Island. That would be the Indian Ocean Christmas Island in the last week. So, no, you haven't stopped the boats. All you've done is be absolutely vicious and nasty and sadistic and cruel and mean to the people who you've locked up for showing up on a boat. The idea is that if you can drive a whole bunch of people, like 900 of them on Manus Island being driven mad by being locked up for being refugees, for running away from an oppressive regime, Australia puts them in a concentration camp. It's a lovely idea. We built a concentration camp and filled it up with fucking Nazis. All the Nazis are the pricks who apply for a job as a guard or an administrator or any capacity working in the concentration camp. You want a job at a concentration camp, you are a fucking Nazi. So, okay, we've concentrated our Nazis around the concentration camp. in there we've got victims, because all concentration camp guards have got to have an innocent victim to lock up and persecute and be nasty to. We've chosen UN certified refugees. And these peanuts are going to have a 54-day election campaign, talking about what great economic managers they are and how they've stopped the boats. Should be fun, should be interesting. I wonder what sort of environmental catastrophe they're going to have during that 54 days. I hear that there's a place called Fort McMurray in Canada where 88,000 people are being evacuated. Their fire's grown from 100,000 hectares to 300,000 hectares in 48 hours. I think they said 2,000 houses and buildings got burnt to the ground in the first day of evacuations, and they were starting to get traffic deaths on the highways, people running away. I heard their governor or premier or whatever it is, the lady in charge of the state, say that because it was expected to double in size and reach 300,000 hectares today, it was probably by the end of the day going to burn across the state border, and it'll be into Saskatchewan, and it's all going off downwind. McNuts too told me that Canada has had pretty much a winter with no snow. What that means is not only is there no snow melting into the ground to keep it all wet, but you've also had all of your vegetation continuing to metabolize and to use what water there was in the soil all through winter. So you emerge into spring and you're sitting on a bushfire fuel bomb, and in this case, it's like 50 or 60 feet high and full of cured pine resin. So they've got a cured pine forest alight, and it's burning, and the game plan at the moment is to hope for Mother Nature to put it out, because all the firefighters and all the fire bombers and heli-tacs and tankers, and you haven't got a hope. Like even property defence is getting a bit ridiculous. All they're trying to do is save the people. And appended to the bottom of one of those little reports about how tragic things are that are going on in Canada, somebody mentioned that this place is kind of smack in the heart of their tar sands and gas fracking industry, and it might actually have a shock effect on the price of fuel in the United States if the fire gets into their petroleum industry, which is apparently lined up to be facing a firestorm. Unless the report was wrong or I've got the geography arse up. But yeah, if that's what's going on, it could be very interesting to see if you've got a petroleum refinery where you're sucking up cold, gluey, oily sand and heating it until you can get the oil out so that you can then pump the oil down to another refinery and turn it into car fuel. Or if you've got all of the above ground pipes for a gas fracking thing, what do you do then if you have a fireball coming over the horizon? I'm bloody glad I'm not fighting fires over there. But personally, I find it yet another example of global warming's extreme weather events making it unprofitable to conduct any form of economic activity. Here in Oz, the Bureau of Meteorology and the CSIRO, Commonwealth Scientific Industrial Research Organisation, they've put their heads together and they've decided that seeing as we've just had the 11 consecutive hottest months in history, January was the hottest January, it was 1.28 degrees above normal. February, the hottest February, 1.35 degrees above normal, etc., etc., etc. April was the hottest April. They reckon the overnight minimum temperature in Australia in May is going to be 8 degrees above the average overnight May temperature. So, could be an interesting election campaign. We might have bushfires in the middle of winter. Wouldn't that be interesting? Warbles on a lot to YouTube. We are approaching the uploading of the limit, so I will call a halt to this movie now. Ciao.